The pendant caught the light and my chest caved in. My grandmother's necklace. The antique silver pendant she'd pressed into my palm on her deathbed, whispering that it belonged to her dreamer, her fighter. It was hanging around Sloan Whitmore's neck like costume jewelry she'd picked up at a department store. I stood frozen in the doorway of the Monarch Hotel ballroom, watching my brother's fiancée laugh at something, her fingers brushing carelessly against the one thing my grandmother had promised was mine. My mother had been in the room when Grandma said those words. She'd heard every syllable, and she'd given it away anyway. The champagne glass in my hand didn't shake, my voice didn't crack, but something inside me went perfectly, dangerously still. The kind of calm that comes right before you decide to burn everything down. My name is Bryn Aldridge. I'm 31 years old and I grew up in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, population barely enough to fill a high school gymnasium. This is the story of how I stopped being invisible to the people who should have seen me all along. What Sloan didn't know, what nobody in that glittering room knew, was that I'd signed the deed to this hotel 3 years ago, the Monarch. Every chandelier above her head, every piece of Italian marble beneath her overpriced heels, every thread in the tablecloth she was leaning against belonged to me. And by the end of tonight, that necklace was coming home. I'd left Millbrook at 18 with $200 and a Greyhound ticket, not because I hated where I came from, but because my family had made it clear there wasn't room for me there. My older brother Marcus was the golden child. Team captain, valedictorian, the son who could do no wrong. Everything I accomplished got measured against him and came up short. So I disappeared into the city and built something from nothing. Cleaning lady at a boutique hotel, front desk, assistant manager, first property at 28, 3 by 30. Now I ran Aldridge Hospitality. 6 boutique hotels across the East Coast with the Monarch as my flagship. But I'd never told my family. They never asked. To them, I was still the struggling little sister eating instant noodles in some cramped apartment. The irony was thick enough to frost a cake. My brother pushed papers at an insurance company while I signed contracts worth more than his annual salary before my morning coffee. Tonight's engagement party invitation had arrived last minute. My mother had tracked down my address through an old college friend, a guilt gesture so she could tell her friends the whole family showed up. I almost didn't come. But something pulled me here. Maybe curiosity. Maybe that stubborn hope that refuses to die no matter how many times it gets kicked. I'd driven through Millbrook on the way, windows down, letting the smell of cut grass and cow pastures remind me where I started. My jeans and boots probably cost more than everything Sloan was wearing combined, but you wouldn't know it by looking. That's the thing about real money. It doesn't need to scream. Sloan finally noticed me standing there. Her smile sharpened into something that could cut glass. "Oh, wonderful." She turned to her bridesmaids, her whisper pitched just loud enough to carry. The country girl made it. Someone open a window. Her friends giggled like they were auditioning for a role in a movie about terrible people. Sloan didn't even look at me when she said it. I was that insignificant to her. Just some embarrassment crawled out of a small town to stain her perfect evening. I smiled back, walked to the bar, and ordered a drink. My staff knew not to acknowledge me. Wesley Oates, my general manager, caught my eye from across the room and gave me a subtle nod. Everything running smoothly, everything perfect. For now. The party was exactly what you'd expect from someone like Sloan. Ice sculptures shaped like swans, a champagne fountain that seemed excessive even by champagne fountain standards, enough flowers to make a florist weep with joy. My hotel staff had outdone themselves, which made me proud, even as I wanted to roll my eyes at every design choice. I found a quiet corner to observe. My father wasn't here. His hip replacement surgery last month meant he was still recovering at home, which was probably a blessing. He'd always been kinder to me than my mother, and watching this unfold would have broken his heart. That's when my mother found me. Patricia Aldridge approached like she'd detected an unpleasant smell and was trying to locate the source. Her eyes traveled down to my boots with visible disapproval. "Nice of you to make it." Her tone suggested it was anything but. "Would it have killed you to wear something appropriate? The Whitmore family is very refined." She stressed the word like vocabulary I should study. Came straight from work, didn't have time to change. She sighed. that familiar exhale of perpetual disappointment. At least try to make a good impression. Then she vanished back into the crowd to continue her social obligations. 20 seconds. That's all it took to feel 12 years old again, failing some invisible standard nobody had bothered to explain. Sloane was air-kissing her way through guests, more cheek contact than a politician at a county fair. Her parents, Franklin and Delilah Whitmore, stood nearby like proud peacocks watching their prized offspring work the room. Franklin was large, red-faced, radiating the kind of confidence that comes from either genuine success or excellent acting. Delilah was thin, polished, dripping with jewelry that caught every light. They looked wealthy. They acted wealthy. But something felt off, like a painting hung slightly crooked. I couldn't name it yet, but I would. Marcus spotted me and wandered over, already looking past me to see who else needed greeting. "Glad you could come." His tone said he hadn't noticed whether I was there or not. "Have you met Sloane yet? She's amazing." "I've seen her." He nodded absently, then dropped something that made my stomach clench. Mom gave Sloane Grandma's necklace as an engagement gift. He actually smiled. "Wasn't that generous? Sloane absolutely loves it." I already knew. I'd seen it around her neck. But hearing Marcus confirm it, hearing him call it generous, sent ice through my veins. "Grandma promised that necklace to me." My voice came out flatter than I intended. She said it specifically. Mom was in the room. Marcus shrugged. "Well, Sloane's family now, or she will be." He squeezed my shoulder like I was being dramatic and disappeared into the crowd. I stood there, processing. My grandmother's dying wish, dismissed with a shrug. My inheritance, dangling from a stranger's neck. And nobody, not my mother, not my brother, had thought to mention it to me. The DJ cranked the music loud enough to rattle my teeth. If I wanted my fillings vibrated, I'd have gone to the dentist. At least there I'd get a free toothbrush. I needed air. I headed for the hallway near the restrooms, and that's when I heard Franklin Whitmore's voice around the corner, phone pressed to his ear, stress bleeding through his salesman's polish. "We need this wedding to happen. The Aldridge family has money, enough to cover our situation." He paused, listening. "Just get us through the ceremony. After that, everything works out." He hung up and walked back toward the party, his mask sliding back into place. I stood frozen. The Aldridge family has money? My parents had a nice house, sure, but I knew for a fact there was a second mortgage on it, because I'd been secretly paying it off for 4 years. Marcus worked a decent insurance job. Nothing spectacular. There was no family fortune. So why did Franklin think there was? It hit me like a truck. For years, I'd been sending money anonymously through Aldridge Hospitality, monthly payments covering my parents' mortgage, utilities, medical bills. When my father needed knee surgery before the hip issues started, I paid without leaving my name. I didn't want gratitude or questions, just wanted to help from a distance. But my parents didn't know it was me. And my mother, in her infinite wisdom, had apparently decided it must be Marcus. Of course she did. Her golden child secretly supporting the family, being the generous success she always knew he was. The money I sent, the sacrifices I made, and Marcus got the credit. The Whitmores had done their research. They saw a nice house with no visible mortgage. They heard Patricia bragging about her son's investments. They saw hidden wealth. They were targeting my family like sharks smelling blood. Except the blood wasn't real. The fortune didn't exist. They were chasing a mirage. And when they found out the truth, my family would be left with nothing but the fallout. I found Wesley near the service entrance, clipboard in hand. Before managing hotels, Wesley had spent a decade in corporate investigations. It's why I'd hired him in the first place. "I need a favor. Background on the Whitmore family, business records, news articles, anything you can find. Use your old contacts if you have to." Wesley didn't ask why. He simply nodded and disappeared with his phone already in hand. I went back to the party. That's when Sloane found me. She appeared at my elbow like a designer-dressed ghost, her smile sweet enough to cause cavities. "We should chat." She put her hand on my arm like we were old friends, just us girls. She guided me toward a quiet corner. The moment we were out of earshot, her smile vanished. "I figured you out." Her voice dropped to something cold. You're probably scraping together whatever you can to send home, playing the good daughter from a distance. It's what desperate people do when they're trying to buy love they couldn't earn. But here's what I can't figure out. Why would someone who can barely afford their own apartment bother with a family that doesn't even like them? I kept my expression neutral. Unless you're trying to prove you're worth something. She leaned closer. Pathetic, really. She studied my face like she was searching for cracks. Marcus told me everything, how you were always jealous of him, how you couldn't handle not being the favorite, how the family only tolerates you out of pity. Her smile returned, sharp as a paper cut. I'm going to marry your brother. I'm going to become part of this family, and honestly, it would be better for everyone if you just stayed away. Nobody would miss you. She patted my arm. Dead weight. Then she walked away. I stood there, processing. Sloane thought I was broke. She thought any family support came from Marcus. She had no idea who I actually was. It was like watching someone brag about their rental car to the person who owns the dealership. Wesley materialized at my elbow, pale-faced, holding a folder. You need to see this. I opened it right there in the hallway. Financial records, court filings, news articles. The Whitmores weren't just in debt. They were under federal investigation for fraud. I took the folder to my car in the parking garage, needing privacy. The overhead lights flickered like they were as shocked as I was. Franklin and Delilah Whitmore had been running what amounted to a Ponzi scheme for years. They collected investor money for real estate developments that either didn't exist or were wildly overvalued. Early investors got paid with money from later investors, the classic con. But the house of cards was collapsing. Auditors were circling. Federal investigators had opened a case. The Whitmores needed an exit strategy. Enter my brother. Find a family that appeared to have money. Marry into it. Use the connection to shore up their crumbling reputation. Or at minimum, have somewhere to hide when everything fell apart. They probably planned to drain whatever assets my family had before disappearing to start the con somewhere else. What they didn't realize was that my family had nothing. The only money flowing into the Aldridge household came from me. I could stop it with a single phone call. Part of me wanted to let it happen. Let them all suffer the consequences. My mother who gave away my inheritance. My brother who never stood up for me. Let them feel what it's like to be discarded. But I couldn't. As much as they'd hurt me, they were still my family. Marcus was still the boy who taught me to ride a bike, even if he'd forgotten. My mother was still the woman who stayed up all night when I had chicken pox, even if she'd decided I wasn't worth remembering. Family is complicated. You can love people and be furious with them at the same time. So I made a decision. I was going to expose the Whitmores. I was going to save my family from a disaster they didn't know was coming. And I was going to do it my way. I locked the folder in my glove compartment and walked back into the Monarch, my heels echoing in the empty garage. I called my lawyer first. Rebecca Thornton answered on the second ring despite it being 8 p.m. That's why I paid her what I did. Confirmation came within the hour. The investigation was real. More importantly, she'd made a call to the lead investigator, Agent Carla Reeves, who'd been trying to locate the Whitmores for months. They kept moving, changing names, staying one step ahead. Agent Reeves, it turned out, was already in Philadelphia following a lead on the Whitmores. My call gave her the exact location she'd been searching for, until tonight. Agent Reeves and her team would be outside the hotel by 9:15 p.m., ready to move once the evidence went public. Next, I called Naomi Delaney, a forensic accountant I'd worked with on a complicated acquisition. Naomi was a wizard with financial records, the kind of person who could look at a spreadsheet and tell you what someone had for breakfast. She still had access to federal court databases from her previous government work. She called back in 40 minutes, voice tight with excitement. You're right. Textbook Ponzi scheme. But here's the interesting part. I looked up the Whitmore name in other states, found something in Arizona from 3 years ago. Same pattern, same scheme, different names. Different names? The bride's real name isn't Sloane. It's Sandra Willis. The parents aren't even her real parents. They're partners in a long-running con. They've been doing this for at least a decade. Different identities, different targets, same game. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. These people had more identities than a Hollywood actress has ex-husbands. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. We'd exchanged numbers at our father's surgery last year, the only time in recent memory my family had actually needed me. Can we talk? Something about Sloane feels wrong. The way Franklin keeps disappearing, the way she deflects every question about her past. Maybe I'm being paranoid. I checked the time. 5 minutes until Franklin's scheduled toast. Too little, too late, big brother. You should have trusted that feeling hours ago. You should have trusted me years ago, I typed back. We'll talk after the toast. Just wait. I walked back into the Monarch with different energy. Before, I was the invisible sister. Now, I was a woman with a plan. Wesley met me near the service entrance. I've been watching the Whitmores. Franklin's made 4 phone calls in the past hour, each one leaving him more agitated. I handed him a USB drive. During Franklin's toast, I want everything on the screens, every document, every photo, every piece of evidence. Wesley took the drive with a slight smile. I always knew working for you would be interesting. He disappeared toward the control room. I found a spot near the back where I could see everything. Sloane was working the room again, that fake smile plastered on. Marcus stood beside her, playing the devoted fiancé, completely unaware his future was about to implode. My mother was chatting with Delilah like they were old friends. 2 women with nothing in common except their ability to make me feel worthless. Soon one would realize she'd been played. The other would realize she'd pushed away the wrong daughter. 8:59 p.m. Franklin stepped onto the stage and took the microphone. The DJ lowered the music. Guests turned, champagne glasses raised. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here to celebrate this beautiful union. His voice oozed charm. When my daughter first brought Marcus home, I knew immediately this young man was special. His daughter. The daughter who wasn't his daughter. The daughter whose real name he probably had to remind himself of every morning. Franklin raised his glass. To love, to family, to forever. I pulled out my phone and sent Wesley one word. Now. The screens flickered. The happy photos of Marcus and Sloane disappeared, replaced by something else. A document stamped with court seals and legal terminology. Franklin's smile froze. A fraud investigation from Arizona, 3 years old. And there, listed as a person of interest, Sandra Willis. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Franklin fumbled with the microphone, face going pale. There's some mistake. Technical error. He shouted toward the AV booth. Someone fix this! The screens kept changing. Financial records showing investor money funneled into shell companies. News articles about a real estate scheme in Phoenix that cost dozens of families their life savings. Photos. A younger Sandra Willis. Different hair. Same cold eyes standing next to Franklin and Delilah under completely different names. Sloane stood frozen on the dance floor, champagne trembling in her hand. Her mask had finally slipped. She looked terrified. Marcus stared at the screens, then at Sloane, then back. I watched the pieces click together behind his eyes. Franklin tried pushing toward the exit. 2 of my security staff stepped into his path. Delilah grabbed his arm, whispering frantically, but there was nowhere to go. That's when I stepped forward. I walked through the parting crowd toward the stage, my boots clicking on marble. Every eye in the room turned to me. The country girl, the nobody, the dead weight. Wesley's voice came over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the owner of the Monarch Hotel and CEO of Aldridge Hospitality. Please welcome Miss Bryn Aldridge. Silence. My mother's face went white. Marcus's jaw dropped. Even Sloane, mid-panic, looked genuinely shocked. I took the microphone from Franklin's limp hand. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the interruption, but I thought you might want to know who you're really celebrating tonight. I gestured to the screens. Franklin and Delilah Whitmore aren't who they claim to be. Their real estate empire is a fraud. Their wealth is stolen from innocent investors, and their daughter Sloane is actually Sandra Willis, a con artist who's been running the same scheme for over a decade. Sloane found her voice. She's lying. She's a jealous, pathetic nobody, making this up because she can't stand seeing Marcus happy. I smiled. Interesting. Did I also make up the federal investigation that's been following you for 2 years? The arrest warrants issued last month in Arizona? I paused. Agent Carla Reeves and her team are waiting outside this hotel right now." The ballroom doors opened. 4 people in suits walked in, badges visible. Sloane's face crumbled. Franklin tried to run, made it about 10 feet before Agent Reeves intercepted him. "Franklin Whitmore, or whatever your real name is, you're under arrest for wire fraud, investment fraud, and conspiracy." Delilah started crying, mascara streaming. "There's been a mistake. We can explain." Sloane turned to Marcus one last time, desperate. "You're really going to let your sister do this to us? We love each other. You have to believe me." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then he stepped away. "I don't even know who you are." His voice was quiet but certain. "I don't know who any of you are." Sloane's expression shifted from desperation to rage. She lunged toward me, screaming, "You ruined everything! You were supposed to be nobody! You're just the stinky country girl!" Security caught her before she reached me. I leaned close enough for only her to hear. "This stinky country girl owns the ground you're standing on, pays the salary of everyone about to escort you out, and will sleep very well tonight knowing exactly who she is." They led her away, still screaming. Designer dress wrinkled, perfect hair destroyed, entire life falling apart with every step. I turned back to the stunned crowd. "Well, catering's already paid for. Shame to waste good food. Bar's staying open for anyone who wants to stick around." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. The DJ started playing something upbeat. The engagement party was over. The night was just beginning. The next hour felt surreal. The Whitmores, all 3, were escorted out in handcuffs while remaining guests watched in silence. Sloane was still screaming threats as they put her in the unmarked car. Something about lawyers, lawsuits, revenge, empty words from an empty person. Marcus found me near the bar. He looked like a man who'd woken from a nightmare only to realize he was still dreaming. "How did you know?" His voice cracked. "How did you figure it out?" I listened. I watched. I paid attention. All the things I'd been doing my entire life while everyone else ignored me. He was quiet then. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't cover it. Doesn't cover years of treating you like an afterthought, but I'm sorry." I studied his face, looking for the catch. All I saw was genuine remorse. "Sorry's a start." We stood there in silence. 2 siblings who'd spent decades as strangers, finally seeing each other. Then my mother appeared. Patricia looked smaller somehow, like the evening had physically shrunk her. She approached slowly, none of her usual confidence on display. "I didn't know." I pulled out my phone. Bank records, transfer receipts, 4 years of payments to her mortgage company, utilities, medical bills, all from Aldridge Hospitality, all from me. "You thought Marcus was supporting you, bragged to everyone about your generous, successful son." I let it hang. "It was me. It was always me." She stared at the phone, then at me. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because you're my family, even when you made me feel like I wasn't yours." I put the phone away. "But you should know the truth about who was actually there for you." Her eyes filled with tears, not the performative kind I'd seen at family events, real ones. "Bryn." She whispered my name like she was saying it for the first time. There was a commotion near the dance floor. I turned to see Grandma's necklace lying on the ground where Sloane had thrown it during her meltdown. Marcus walked over and picked it up carefully. He looked at it for a long moment, then brought it to me. "This was always supposed to be yours. I didn't know Mom gave it away." His voice was thick. "I'm sorry." He placed it in my hand. The weight felt right, like something missing for years was finally back where it belonged. My mother watched, tears streaming. I was so wrong about everything. I didn't disagree, but I didn't pile on either. There would be time for difficult conversations later. 3 weeks later, I sat in my office at the Monarch, morning sun streaming through the windows. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. The Whitmores were finished. Federal prosecutors had enough evidence for multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Sandra Willis was in custody awaiting trial. Bail set high enough that even her fake wealthy parents couldn't afford it. Turns out when you spend decades stealing from people, You don't have many friends left when things go wrong. Marcus had formally called off the engagement the morning after the party, returned the ring to evidence since it was probably bought with stolen money anyway. The story made local news for about a week. One headline called me the country girl who owned the room. I had it framed. It hangs where I can see it every morning. Marcus visited yesterday. First time he'd seen my office, my staff, the life I'd built. I spent years thinking I knew who you were. He touched the window overlooking the city. I was wrong about everything. We've got a lot of years to make up for. Maybe we should start now. We went to lunch, a real lunch. Not a family obligation with small talk and avoided topics. We talked about our childhood, our parents, all the things we'd never said. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was honest. More than we'd ever had before. My mother started therapy last week, called to tell me, voice small and uncertain. She wanted to understand why she'd treated me the way she did. She wanted to be better. I told her I appreciated that. We could take things slow. My father called too once he was feeling better. He'd always suspected the anonymous payments came from me. He just never said anything because he didn't want to embarrass my mother by pointing out she'd assumed wrong. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Always have been." Sometimes the quietest people see the most. Rebuilding trust takes time, but at least we were finally building something instead of watching it crumble. This morning I hosted a business breakfast. Investors, partners, expansion discussions, normal stuff. A young woman walked in looking nervous. Simple clothes, hair pulled back, eyes wide as she took in the elegant surroundings. Clearly out of her element. One of my investors, a man named Gerald with too much money and too few manners, made a comment loud enough for everyone. "Who let her in? This is a private event." I stood up and walked over to her, extending my hand. "Nicole, so glad you could make it." I turned to the table. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Nicole Patterson, this year's recipient of the Aldridge Hospitality Scholarship. She grew up in a small town in Ohio, worked 2 jobs through community college, and starts at Cornell's hotel management program this fall." The room went quiet. Gerald found his coffee suddenly fascinating. I led Nicole to a seat at my table. Same table as the investors, the people who thought they were better than her. "Thank you," she whispered, looking overwhelmed. "Don't thank me yet. The real work's just starting." I caught her eye. "But if you ever feel like you don't belong somewhere, remember, the people who built the most beautiful things usually started with nothing but stubbornness and dreams." She smiled at that. After breakfast, I stood in the lobby watching guests come and go. Business people, tourists, families, all walking on floors I owned, completely unaware of the woman who made it possible. That was fine. I didn't need them to know. People will always try to make you feel small for where you came from. Let them. While they're busy looking down on you, they won't see you rising up. I learned that lesson in a small town where I was never good enough, never pretty enough, never enough of anything. Carried it through years of struggle and doubt and people telling me I'd never amount to anything. And now here I was, standing in my hotel, surrounded by everything I built. The stinky country girl who smelled success coming from a mile away. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles, 0 cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.